Hello, this is Jason from LMGI, continuing with SolidEdge fundamentals. This next activity, we're going to remove some material from our vise project. The first thing I'd like to have you notice is the activity in the book is a little flawed in my opinion, because they're having you model and they're not asking you to maintain kind of the symmetry about the base coordinate systems. There's many reasons you really want to do this. So to move an entire part onto the base coordinate system, you simply hover with your select tool and wait for the dots. Choose the entire design body and then position your steering wheel strategically. In this case, I'm going to put it onto the mid point of that edge, and I'm just going to move the entire body. Now we'll cover the design intent panel later. For now, we may not even need, because we're moving the entire part, we don't really need any of those settings, and they may in fact prevent a move in some cases. So that will move it first in the X direction, and you see the steering wheel stays in place, and then I'll move it over to the midpoint here and move it in the other direction. So now there's the design has symmetry in it, so that means now when I make edits and when I put my design intent on, I just tapped R on the keyboard, by the way. It turned all my design intent back on. It sees the symmetry in the design, and all is well. So let's continue with the activity. Line command. I'm going to draw my favorite way, which is visually approximate, and then accurately based on the numbers that I have. So I grab my smart dimension, use my Control H, kind of prefer to look squarely at the top. This is 8. Actually, we don't have a dimension on that side, we have one from this side. This is 32. The overall width is 127. And 45. Just based on the drawing that I'm looking at. So again, this does form a nice region, so you can simply select that region. They want to point out there are different extent options here that you can take advantage of. Finite is based on a number, through all will go all the way. In this case, we could probably use that, and you kind of just make sure you point the arrow in a direction that it solves. And at some point you really want to observe some of the other options here. We'll cover a little bit as we go, but that's given me the solution that I want, so that looks pretty good. Let's see, moving on, we're going to draw a little circle on one end. You'll see the reason for this. Again, locking. I like my Control H. I'm going to pick up this midpoint. And one of the amazing things about the synchronous modeling is, notice I'm actually I'm working what seems to be a little sloppy. I imagine I'm not trimming my elements. It's because I know all I really need here is a region to remove that material. And I'm going to go ahead and hide my sketch. So what it does is that any remaining sketch that didn't get completely consumed for that cut, it will leave it there. Once the sketch is consumed, it moves it into the used sketches bin, just in case you needed to restore that at some time in the future. But you could actually just delete that if you wanted to. Even this sketch here, if you found it annoying and you didn't think there was another use for it, you could just delete it. There's no need to keep that around. We'll go ahead and put a little hole for the through hole, I guess. Probably would use the hole command normally, but I'm just kind of working to the book. It's not too bad. The next we're going to make a little slot for the bottom, and at any point come up here and just hide all your PMI if you want to clean up the screen. Grab your line drawing command, lock to a face, Control H, and I'm going to use my favorite workflow and just kind of eyeball this, kind of keep it roughly what I want, and then I'm going to go and constrain it. I know these need to be equal, and horizontal vertical relationship, I'll hover and get the tool tip on that maybe. This is a great way to line up, say, a key point to a midpoint. And now we can apply dimensions. Looks like we have a 25 and a 32. And a height of 27. And an overall of 43. I could do equals or a collinear, but I think equals is pretty good for these two. So there we go, simple sketch. I think that looks correct. If it's not, now I'm going to blast this through. Again, you can just make sure you plow it all the way through, or if you really want to feel like you're doing it correctly, you can do through all. Now these make a lot more sense, or they're actually retained in ordered modeling. The through all, through next, and from to, all these steps are actually retained, but synchronous modeling, they're more of a convenience, because you'll notice when you go back to this cutout and if you try to edit it, you won't ever get those parameters back. If you needed to change the depth of it, you would have to simply model in. You'd restore the sketch and kind of plug up some remaining area. So it's just because there's no history. Works very well, actually. And now I think we need maybe a couple of holes. I don't really see the details, but I'll pop those in. Just some arbitrary holes. The hole command is very standards based. We'll do a let's do like an M6 threaded hole, as if we were going to have a screw maybe and a fixed vise. So I'm going to hit F3 to lock. I might come over here and pick up that midpoint, and then if you brush the previous hole, and sometimes people ask, what if I needed these centralized? Well, you could do a couple things. You could draw a sketch prior, or actually I would probably just use my smart dimension and think about the order that you place the dimension. So notice I click the hole second, and that means that the hole moves when I change the dimension. So edge first, hole second, place my dimension, and of course there's other ways that we could do that. And then if I put one in between, this would be 30. We could actually change that equal space now because of the way the dimension allows me to change in a symmetrical manner. Make that maybe 40. So there's certainly a couple of ways to control that. And now we'll add some little feet to the base. I'm going to grab the line command. Now sometimes you will be locked on a previous plane. You want to unlock and then relock. And I'm just going to click on the end, tap my A, come around, close it, go right to dimensioning. That's a 14 and a 10. And then we can extrude this. What did they want? 3 millimeters. Actually, it should be thicker than that. Let's do 10. So that's 1 foot. Maybe I'll go ahead and put a hole. Maybe just a simple hole. M10. I'm gonna lock with the F3. Touch that circle. Should pick up the center. And then we need more feet. Now, the way they have you do it in the book was probably a little different. I would probably mirror these. You could make copies pretty easily. There's a couple of things you could do. You could pick the, you could just pick the geometry. Make sure you pick enough. You probably need to tap spacebar and grab this bottom and put the steering wheel at this leading edge, and I'm going to hold my control key down, or I could press this button in just before I touch the arrow, and then we're going to move that down to that corner. And you see I didn't get enough geometry. I needed that end cap, so I'm just going to undo that, grab this again, space bar, end cap, bottom, place this at that corner, control key down, arrow, destination, bang, I got a foot. So that's one way to do that. You just need to pick enough faces so that it can refuse itself onto the other side, is kind of the way to think of it. It's kind of like building a concrete form. You need to make sure you have enough sides to hold the concrete. And if you wanted to do a mirror, you could do that as well. Again, you'd want to make sure you pick enough geometry. So you'd pick the feet and the bottom. In this case, I'd probably even need the ends. It seems probably a little funny. It will trim away the extra geometry that it doesn't actually need. And then I'll go ahead and just mirror about that plane. And that's another great way to copy that geometry very quickly. And there's our vise. Give that a whirl.